I want to get on to overdiagnosis, anxiety, depression, ADHD. It's so prevalent in our generation.
Yeah.
And I would say I know more people that say they've got some form of mental illness than don't. In the US, antidepressants usage has surged by nearly 65% in the past 15 years, with women twice as likely to take them as men. In the UK, antidepressant prescriptions for children aged from 5 to 12 increased by more than 40% between 2015 and 2021. What's going on?
I think I think a big part of it is, again, we've lost the language of just normal suffering, normal human experiences, where young people are now convinced that, you know, like the normal state of life is being happy and satisfied. So you do have people who are really struggling, who you know, are self-harming and starving themselves, and you can't deny that they're, you know, having real emotional pain. But a massive part of it is this belief that if there's something wrong with you, if you're insecure about something, it's a disorder that needs remedying. So, for example, what I was saying before about young women maybe thinking they're needy or insecure for wanting monogamy, they then become anxiously attached, or they become autistic. There's something wrong with them that they so desperately want to depend on someone. And I think that happens with so many things that young people struggle with. It's like, again, your shyness is not because you're a 13-year-old that's grown up on screens. It's because you have a specific disorder that needs lifelong treatment. And so, yeah, I think, again, it all feeds each other. It's like, I think what young people are experiencing is often real emotional pain, but it's pain from not practicing resilience and not having face-to-face interaction and all these things. And it's real, and it feels real to them. So when they say, no, this is actually a social anxiety disorder, what they're saying is this shyness is so painful you would not believe. But they're saying that because they haven't practiced eye contact with people. They haven't had a community. They're not bumping into their neighbours. But now they're incentivized to say, oh no, this pain is so bad, it must be a disorder.
Again, it's that willingness to put a label on everything. And I think that gives people a lot of comfort. People have that fear of the unknown. And it's much nicer to have an explanation, even if it's self-deprecating. It at least gives you a crutch. It at least gives you something to blame when things don't go your way. You can be cynical. And my friend Felice Basball talks about this. There are all these studies that come out. University students are more likely to be depressed and anxious than any other age group in the population. And it's like, yeah, of course they are. They're going away from home for the first time. They don't know what they're going to do with their lives. They don't know what friends they're going to meet, what career path they're going to take, if they're going to be able to afford a house, if they're going to be able to have kids one day. Nothing is certain. Of course, you're going to have the symptoms of someone with anxiety. And it's the same with a hormonal 12-year-old girl. She's going through so many changes in her life. Of course, she's going to fit all these symptoms, but that doesn't mean you have to diagnose her with an actual condition.
Yeah, well, it's like some of the TikToks about like gender dysphoria are like, do you feel like you don't know who you are yet? And it's like targeted at like a 15-year-old. It's like, well, obviously they don't know who they are. They don't know, how to express themselves or their gender or whatever it is. Like you don't know anything at that age. You just feel so confused. And it's an important kind of rite of passage to actually find out who you are, is to go through that confusion. So yeah, I think it's such a tragedy because it's like, I don't think people quite realize that the mental health industry, every single preteen or teenager can fit into a diagnosis and be convinced that they're sick. And the only kind of weapon they have against that is enough faith in themselves to get through some confusion and pain and not diagnose it, or to have parents who step in. Like if those things aren't there, you will convince yourself you're sick. And I think anyone you speak to about adolescence would say, yeah, I would be diagnosed ADHD, or yeah, I'd be diagnosed with social anxiety disorder if I was young now. And that's the problem, is all of these symptoms are also symptoms of being 12 years old. And so I think that's another reason why young people need to be off social media, is because these companies and these influencers who promote these kind of, 5 signs you're autistic TikToks, they're going to appeal to every adolescent girl because that's what they're designed to do.
This diagram will reveal your ADHD type. It's pathologizing the natural order of life, and then you suddenly throw in all these hormones in the mix, it makes the temporary struggle irreversible because you're fundamentally altering your hormones inside your body. And I think at the core of all of this is treating symptoms rather than the causes of things. And Dr. Susie Bennett, she's one of the lead male suicide researchers in the world. I had her on my show, and she gives this great analogy about suicide, that it's like taking the lid off a boiling pot of water when you speak to someone. It's going to relieve the stress. It's going to stop the water from boiling over. But ultimately, just by talking about it and diagnosing these symptoms rather than the cause, that heat at the bottom of that stove is still on, and eventually it's going to boil up again. So you can't just constantly go through life treating symptoms. You need to root out the cause of your struggles, and that's much harder to do.
I was going to say that's a long process. Like if you discover at 18 that you're actually cripplingly shy, it's not like you can just say, okay, I'm going to watch a couple of podcasts on shyness and like read about it, and in a few weeks I'll be fine. It's like that's like a 5-year potentially process of, I'm going to have to go to events I hate going to. I'm going to have to sit through discomfort. I'm going to have to be awkward and embarrassing. And previous generations had no choice but to do that, because they had to go and work in person. They had to go and talk in person, flirt in person. Whereas now, we can work remotely. We can do all our leisure time, entertainment remotely. We can even do our therapy for shyness remotely. And it's like that long process. Then why would you pick that if you're 15, when you can just take the easy route, which is, okay, I won't live my life. I'll just watch influencers live theirs, or I'll just stay inside and do all of this mediated through a screen. And I think that's the problem, is like you look at TikTok, and this is literally what these people are saying, which is like, if you feel discomfort talking to someone, it's social anxiety. And it's like, no, that's just the process of not being shy anymore. You're just going to feel uncomfortable every time you talk to someone, until soon you feel a little bit less uncomfortable, and then a little bit less. And then you're just capable of doing it. But yeah, I think young people are being deprived of that lesson.
What's fascinating to me is that I'm in all of these self-help circles. I go to the gym, all of my friends do. And there's that understanding that the temporary pain that you do physically for your body will pay off, and it'll be worth it. But that link between putting that in practice into other things in your life is completely severed.
Well, relationships, it's like we were saying, people think, oh, this person might hold me back here or challenge me here. I have to focus on my work, and now I have to deal with a relationship argument that I wouldn't otherwise have to deal with if I was single. And it's like, it's the same as going to the gym. Like, all of these things are building your resilience to the fact that life is messy and full of friction, and, obstacles constantly come up. Whereas if you stay single, you're just like, you can avoid that, but to your detriment, because it's the same as being like a 18-year-old shy person avoiding going out. When you get to 25, you're in an even worse position. And I think we don't think, it's so true. We don't think about that in other scenarios of our life. Like, the challenge is actually good for us, and actually the only way to get the meaningful result in the end.
70% of American adults are on some form of medication. 40% are on 2 medications or more. What do you think to this whole world of medication, treating things with hormones? Do you think there's a more sinister level to this, which is companies trying to profit? Is it sort of a coincidence that this is going up at the same time? What's going on?
I mean, I find it so bizarre when people don't think it's sinister, because, I find the most pushback I get when I talk about the mental health industry, or like young people on medication, is from like progressive leaning people who are really skeptical of big business. They're really skeptical of billionaires. They're really skeptical of like, white men or whatever it is. And then they will define their lives by like a DSM diagnosis, which was created pretty arbitrarily by some men in a room, who just kind of, I think they just put their hands up when they thought something should be a symptom of a disease. And then funded by these like billion-dollar pharmaceutical industries, which we know are quite sinister. We've had lots of evidence of that. So I find it bizarre that like it's become now almost right-leaning thing to think that, oh, these companies might be sinister. And I also find it strange that like, I look online at some of these things and they're so patronizing toward women, especially. Like there's that company Hers, the medication company. They're like so they say they sell self-care products, which is like hair gummies, skincare products, and also psychiatric drugs. So they sell like mental health medication. But they'll say things like, oh, if you pay £99, we'll help you deal with like daily stresses. And this is targeted toward women. And it's so patronizing to read it because it's like, you think we can't handle like daily anxieties. And I find it really strange that this is not more of like a feminist argument, which is like the mental health industry is literally treating women like children. They have a HIMSS website as well, which sells like hair vitamins and like erectile dysfunction pills. But the women's website is like all about mental health and getting through the day. And like, you really need help with, like it says things like exams and breakup stress. Like, why not try this medication? And it's like, why are we children that can't cope and we need to be medicalized? So yeah, I find it like extremely sinister and strange that more people don't.
Susie Bennett also talks about how we're well adapted to a sick society.
Yeah.
And I think that rings so true. And you speak about how you used to watch influencers that would talk about their mental health, and it was initially quite positive. It was quite an open approach to things.